Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365, giving you the edge in MMA betting. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back once again to break down UFC on ESPN 5 from Newark, New Jersey. John, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm very well, thank you, my friend. I'm very well. Another week, another UFC event. That means we're here again. 2 weeks in a row now, I've been a little bit unsure of the fight card that we're going to get. I mean, again, it's as you mentioned with UFC 240 last week. Name value wise, it's lacking slightly, but man, there's still potential for there to be some fun matchups in there. So I'm looking forward to it.
And the plus side from us anyway is it starts at 5 p.m. in the UK.
It's beautiful.
even if the fight card is a little subpar, or the fights are a little subpar, then at least we're not staying up till like 4, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning for it. So
Definitely.
Every cloud's got its silver lining, I suppose. And just before we start, as always, I just want to quickly talk about MMA Play 365. Unfortunately, we are coming off our first loss last week, but listen, losing events happen and it's a part of this game. The key to long-term profit is to keep those losses minimal, though. And that's exactly what last week was. It was a -2 units night, so nothing too drastic there. But it caps off our very first month since we launched. We've went 3-1 on events in July for 6.37 units of profit and a 20% return on investment. And for the fun gamblers, we also cashed 3 parlays from the 4 events too. So all in all, it was a fantastic opening month, and we still have our crazy offers available. Remember, it's only $198 for your first full year, or $30 per month, which can be cancelled at any time. So sign up today and start making money. So with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC Newark. And in the main event of the Newsome MMA main card is the main event, Colby Covington versus Robbie Lawler. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a fight that I'm really looking forward to seeing. I mean, any fight that involves Robbie Lawler is always fun. Any fight that involves Colby Covington, there's always going to be some kind of controversy behind it, or there's going to be something in the build-up, or people just want to see Colby Covington because of the guy he is. Either they love him and they want to see him victorious and see what he has to say post-fight, etc., etc., or like Ben Askren the other week with Jorge Masvidal, they want to see him get his head knocked off his shoulders. So either way, this fight I think is going to be fun. And for me, it's quite similar to the fight that we saw the other week with Masvidal and Askren, and indeed Lawler's last fight, obviously against Askren, going up against the wrestler in Colby Covington. Colby's style does differ a little from Askren. He does, I think he's a better striker than Ben Askren is, and he does tend to try to set up his takedowns a little more than Ben Askren, who will just dive for the ankles regularly. But yeah, even so, Covington does have that style where he's just high energy for 25 minutes if needs be. He'll back you up against the fence with his pressure, and then he'll just go for takedowns over and over again, rinse and repeat. I mean, he doesn't have the best top game. When he does get you down, it's quite possible for his opponents to get back to their feet. We've seen that a number of times. I mean, the Rafael dos Anjos fight, which was his last fight in June last year, that was very similar. I mean, I think he landed about 8 or 9 takedowns in that fight, which I say quite often on the takedowns, 8 or 9 on the podcast, 8 or 9 takedowns. Yeah, looks good on paper, but if you're taking your opponent down 8 or 9 times, you're obviously giving them the opportunity to get back to their feet, which ideally you don't want to do. You want to get your opponent down, you want to keep them there, and you want to have that heavy top pressure, nullify their game, and see out rounds. But if you're letting your opponent get back to their feet, you're always giving your opponent that opportunity to start striking with you again. And obviously we know that Robbie Lawler is a very dangerous striker. He hits hard, hits ferociously, he can knock guys out, but I'm not sure about this fight, man. I think it's going to be one of those where it's going to be a case of either Lawler wins it very early on, but if we get outside of a round and a half, possibly 2 rounds at a maximum, I think that Colby Covington's going to start to steal the show. I think that Robbie Lawler has to come out there swinging, has to come out there hard, fast, similar to how he did against Askren. Obviously, he came out, dropped Askren on his head, nearly finished him. Every chance that in other fights that gets stopped by the referee, because Askren looked pretty out of it on the ground, but he managed to regain his senses, get back to his feet. Obviously, he pushed Lawler to the fence, then took him down, and the rest is history, as they say, with that controversial bulldog choke finish. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Colby Covington, when he sets up his takedowns, he tends to he tends to come crashing in sometimes from a bit of a distance as well. He usually likes to push you to the fence, like I mentioned earlier, and come crashing in from a distance. And he doesn't always close that distance in the most elegant of manners or the most efficient of ways, should we say. Rafael dos Anjos landed on him several times when they fought and when Colby Covington was coming in to close the distance for the takedowns against the fence. And RDA doesn't really hold the power that he held at lightweight now that he's moved up to welterweight. But like I said earlier, Robbie Lawler is a guy with power, and especially early on, he can hit you hard, and he can and he can put the lights out pretty easily. So if Colby isn't careful, if Colby doesn't set up the takedowns, especially like I say in the first round and a half, 2 rounds even, if he doesn't set those takedowns up effectively, and he just keeps his head on the centre line and he just comes crashing in from a distance, telegraphs the takedown. If Lawler lands a knee, an uppercut, one of those big swinging bombs, it could quite easily be lights out for Colby Covington. We've seen him been finished before. His only loss of his career came to Wally Alves. Obviously that was via guillotine going in for a takedown, but I mean, I wouldn't like to. I don't really fancy anyone's chin against Robbie Lawler particularly. I wouldn't like to hedge my bets with someone just constantly diving in with their chin exposed to Robbie Lawler, especially during the first 10 minutes of a fight. But if Colby Covington can see out those first 2 rounds, if he can spend some time on top, wear Robbie Lawler down, tire him out, I mean, Colby Covington's I think he's got the stamina and the endurance to go for 45 minutes. I mean, the guy's a machine when it comes to cardio, and he can go hard. He can really wear on you for the full 25 minutes of a 5-round fight, and I think that is what we're going to see in this fight. I think he's going to see out those first couple of rounds. I think he's going to be quite cautious. It wouldn't surprise me if he got clipped, but he manages to weather the storm and see out the onslaught from Robbie Lawler. I mean, don't forget we're having to go back quite a long way for Lawler's last finish via strikes, and that was the Rory McDonald fight back in 2015. So yeah, I think Colby Covington's going to be able to see out the first 2 rounds of this fight. I think he may get clipped, but be able to weather the storm, and I think he's going to make it a miserable 25 minutes for Robbie Lawler. I think he's going to take him down. I don't think he'll be able to keep that top pressure for the entirety of the rounds. I think maybe Lawler will get back to his feet, but it might be a case of they have another 30 seconds on the feet, and then Colby lands another takedown, and I think that's just the way it's going to pan out for the entirety of the 25 minutes. Maybe by the first round. So I think Colby Covington's going to win this. I think he's going to win a fairly comfortable decision.
Yeah, man. I love these stylistic matchups. You know, you've got a relentless wrestler against a knockout artist. It's either going to be Robbie Lawler that flatlines Colby Covington, or it's going to be nuts on the forehead for 25 minutes. You know what I mean? So it's a really good fight, and it's always the stylistic fights that I love to see, because one guy's game is going to be imposing. Now, from Robbie Lawler's perspective, it is really as simple as he has to knock Colby Covington out, because I just don't see him winning a decision. If this fight goes for 25 minutes and he hasn't knocked Colby out, I just feel that Colby's going to have scored takedowns and, you know, spent the most time pressing Lawler's back against the cage. It's going to be that sort of grinding wrestling performance from Colby, which, you know, we don't see any other performance, obviously, apart from the Damian Maia fight. That was a little bit different, but with all that said, that's how the fight is going to go. It's either going to be Lawler that knocks him out, or it's going to be Colby taking a decision on a finish along the way. I don't really see a finish from Colby, though, if I'm honest, so I do think it's going to be one of those 2 options. Now, Colby has to be really smart in this fight. He can't fuck about. He can't play about. You know, I watched an interview with him today. He does seem focused. He actually had a lot of nice things to say about Robbie Lawler. The fact that he is looking better than ever and he's motivated and all this sort of stuff, which is quite surprising to hear from Colby. Normally he's the type of guy that's, you know, trying to wind his opponent up and shitting on him and things like that. So it was refreshing to hear that. But to me, that showed that Colby's really focused for this fight. Now, a couple of points to mention, because obviously Lawler's got to defend takedowns, and he's been in there with wrestlers before. I don't think he's ever been in there with a better wrestler than what he's going to face with Colby for reasons that I'll mention in a minute. But he's got decent takedown defense. He won't get absolutely steamrolled over. He won't get taken down with the first attempt. But this is where I think Colby has got a stylistic advantage from that perspective, because he is a wrestler that will chain wrestle. So the chances are he probably won't get that first shot, and especially not against Lawler, but he'll push Lawler back to the cage and he'll chain from doubles to singles and try and trip Lawler to the mat if he needs to as well. That's just his game. And also the pace and pressure that Colby brings. That RDA fight was just unbelievable. Like, when you go back and watch that fight, the pace that he put on for 25 minutes was just crazy. Yes, he slowed down very, very minimally, but man, fighters should not be slowing down by a little amount with the pace and pressure that Colby was putting on him. And that really helps Colby because, as you've already mentioned, John, he's the type of fighter that will score 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 takedowns in a fight, because he hasn't got that solid top control. He won't keep fighters at this level anyway, especially against someone like Lawler, on the mat for long periods of time. They will stand back up, but this is where his cardio really plays in, because that's fine with Colby. He'll let you get back up and he'll stick to you and he'll just take you down again. He'll dump you and dump you and dump you. And unfortunately, even if you have a good round against him via striking, if he scored 3 or 4 takedowns in that round, he's gonna win the round. That's just how it goes. So it's, like I said, it's really tough for Robbie Lawler to win this by decision, because I feel that the rounds are going to play out like that. Now, where Lawler really needs to capitalise, and again you mentioned it as well, John, is when Colby comes crashing in. If Colby's got his head ducked at sort of waist height, there's going to be knees. There's going to be opportunity for knees, opportunities for uppercuts, and he's never been knocked out. But as I've just said, Lawler, I don't think has fought a wrestler the caliber of Colby. I don't think Colby's fought a guy with the veteran experience and the power that Robbie Lawler possesses. So this is why it's such a great fight. But for me, the smart thing that Colby should be doing in this fight is he shouldn't be crashing forward. He shouldn't be shooting in the double legs and single legs, especially from too far out. If he does shoot in, he's got to be within that boxing range. So the uppercut could be there, the knee could be there, but the range on that isn't going to be as drastic as if he was further out in regards to the power it'll cause when it connects. So for me, Colby can't come crashing in from distance. He would be better served just tying up with Lawler, trying to push him against the cage, and then dropping whilst he's on the cage to the doubles and the singles, because the counters in regards to the uppercuts and the knees just won't be there in that stage. But that's, again, it's tough in itself, because Lawler's not a soft dude. He's a big dude. He's a powerful dude. So, it's, like I say, it's a very interesting fight. The bottom line is, for me though, is, like I say, I don't think Lawler's been in there with a wrestler as good as Colby, and Lawler's been taken down quite a few times when he's fought wrestlers in the past. And I just feel that Colby's going to fight smart in this fight. I think the power that Lawler possesses is going to make Colby a little bit more defensively cautious, which is actually a good thing, and it's going to bring his wrestling out a little bit more. Colby does sometimes like to hang on the feet of his opponents for a little bit and gauge the wrestling, and then start pushing the wrestling sort of maybe 2.5 minutes or 3-4 minutes into the fight. But with this fight, because he's so aware of the power that Lawler possesses, I think that's going to play into Colby's game. I think he's going to be defensively minded and be cautious that he can't do anything stupid, because it's going to be lights out if he gets caught. The other thing is that I feel people are overlooking in this fight as well is, Robbie Lawler. Again, you said it, John. He needs to come forward. Early on, he needs to swing bombs. He needs to land on Colby. But from Lawler's perspective, he needs to be careful as well, because if he does come in wild and swings a shot at Colby and misses, Colby's just going to duck it and take him down. So Lawler's got to be very tactile as well with how he goes about his job in the cage. Like I say, a solid wrestler and will always always cause hesitation in his opponent of coming forward too hard in case they overexert themselves. So I think both of those, in regards to Colby recognising the power and being a bit more defensively cautious, and Lawler being cautious of Colby's offensive wrestling, I just feel that the clash of styles in this fight is going to favour Colby. And I agree with the thesis, man. If Lawler doesn't get this done in, 1 or 2 rounds, it's gonna be ugly and go downhill very quick for him, because Colby's got that pace and pressure to go 25 minutes as hard as he did in rounds 1 and 2. So it's a great fight. Lawler's got to get the KO, but for me, I'm going Colby Covington to win, and I think he's going to win it by a decision. And in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, we've got Jim Miller against Clay Guida, 2 veterans. John, who have you got?
Yeah, madness. Who would have thought that this is the co-main event of a UFC show in 2019? I mean, this could be the main event back in like 2010 or something crazy like that, man. But I know that I've seen a lot of people on social media talking about this is like a really poor matchup and stuff for a co-main event and whatnot. But let's not forget the original co-main event fell through. I think that was meant to be Volkan Ozdemir fighting Latifi. Obviously, that got pulled, so this got promoted. Obviously, Jim Miller's in his own backyard as well, so you can see why he's got promoted to the co-main event status. And you know what? I think it'll be quite a fun fight, despite the fact that both guys are obviously coming towards the tail end of their careers now. People obviously know what Clay Guida's all about. He's this high energy guy. He'll mix up his wild strikes with wrestling and quite relentless wrestling as well. Although he has slowed down considerably over the last few years. I mean, I watched him again in the build up to this podcast. I watched that BJ Penn fight again, and obviously everyone knows everything about BJ Penn now. He should have hung up the gloves years ago, and I wasn't overly impressed by Clay Guida at all. I mean, he's slowed down a lot. He's still got that bounce, that long hair of his. He's still bouncing around wildly, but you can definitely see that he's lost a step of pace or two in his attacks. And Jim Miller, for me, is definitely the more technical guy out of the two going into this fight. I mean, like I say, Guida's pretty wild on the in the striking exchange. He'll swing wild combinations of hooks, things like that. But Jim Miller's pretty crisp. I mean, we saw that in his last fight against Jason Gonzalez. He hit Gonzalez with a couple of nice 1-2 straight down the pipe that stung Gonzalez, and then obviously got that takedown and eventually sunk in the rear naked choke. And for me, that victory over Gonzalez is a lot more impressive than Clay Guida's last fight, which was the victory over Penn. Now, Jim Miller, of course, is a guy that's coming into this fight with five defeats in the last 7 fights for him. His only wins have come against Gonzalez and White, but I kind of feel sorry for the guy, man, because obviously he's been struggling with health and stuff. I think he's had Lyme disease, if I remember rightly, for a long time now, and it's really took it out of him throughout the middle stage of his career. And then when you look at the 5 losses in his last 7 fights that he's had, it's Dustin Poirier, Anthony Pettis, Francisco Trinaldo, Dan Hooker, and Charles Oliveira. Man, they're all beasts. I mean, he's not losing to bums and stuff like that. I mean, he's not fighting the caliber of people like BJ Penn and losing to them and things like that. I mean, he's losing to dangerous guys, and the Dustin Poirier fight as well, which started that losing streak. I know that was a couple of years ago, and a lot can happen in a few years, but he looked really good in that Poirier fight, and that fight went to a majority decision in Poirier's favour. But man, Jim Miller really busted up Poirier. He damaged his leg. He really stung him with some combinations, and I do think Jim Miller is looking a lot sharper on his feet than he has done in the past. Obviously, he's a specialist in his grappling. I mean, he's a very dangerous grappler, finishes a lot of fights via submission, but as I say, striking's really come on, and I think that for me in this fight, I think that Jim Miller's kind of held the level for a certain amount of time, and some people may argue against me on this one. I'd like to hear people's thoughts on it in the comments as always, but I think Jim Miller's held that kind of level. I mean, I don't really think he's decreased massively in his skill set. I don't think we've seen a massive decline in his abilities. I mean, I think he's just losing to guys that are better than him. All those guys that have beaten him are, I mean, Dan Hooker's on a bit of a tear. Obviously, he got that beating against Barbosa, but apart from that, man, he's been killing people. We saw him knock out Vic and the other week. Charles Oliveira's on a tear. Trinaldo's always a dangerous guy. He's a dangerous striker. Pettis and Poirier, we don't need to talk about those guys. Poirier obviously fighting Khabib soon. Pettis, the former champion. I mean, he's not losing to any old guys. I mean, he's losing to decent competition. I don't really think he's declined massively. Maybe a slight decline, but I don't think there's anything massive like we see with other fighters who are coming towards the twilight years in their career. Clay Guida, on the other hand, he's a guy who's won 3 of his last 4 fights. That only lost coming to Charles Oliveira. But as I mentioned, that BJ Penn fight for me, I don't know whether it's because he was fighting a guy in BJ Penn who really is at the end of his career, and maybe he just got dragged down to that level a bit. But I wasn't really impressed with him. I mean, the fight played out on the feet. I thought Guida looked pretty slow. He's striking, as I mentioned, he's always been pretty wild. He hasn't really been a technical kind of guy, but he didn't look very crisp or anything like that. I just thought it was pretty sloppy, to be honest. I mean, and it's not really hard to look particularly great against 2019 BJ Penn, unfortunately, I have to say, against the legend that is. But yeah, I think Jim Miller's going to win this fight. I mean, I think he's going to be the more technical striker. I think that Guida's going to have trouble taking him down. I mean, he hasn't got a great takedown percentage. If you look, it's in the 30%, 37% maybe, I think, off the top of my head, if I remember rightly, the stats. 37%. So he does struggle to get those takedowns, although he does constantly pursue them. But over more recent years, he does seem to have slowed down in his pursuit of takedowns. B, I think he'll worry about Jim Miller's ground game. Jim Miller is dangerous on the ground, so if he does try to go for those takedowns, I think he'll be a bit cautious of the ground game anyway. So I don't think he'll want to particularly play around with Jim Miller on the ground, especially given the fact that I think he's lost about 9 fights via of the 18 via submission that he's got on his record. And then the final point is, if this fight does stay standing there because Guida A, can't get it to the mat, or B, doesn't want to get it to the mat, I think Jim Miller's a more technical striker, and I think he'll be able to land shots on him. Now, there's every possibility Guida could make this ugly. He could make it scrappy. He could land in the exchanges with wild flurries like the Clay Guida we know and love of old. But for me, I'm going with Jim Miller to win this fight. I think this is another fight that's going to go to a decision. I don't think Jim Miller finishes Guida unless he finishes him late on via submission. But I'm going to go err on the side of caution with this one. I think it's going to go the distance, and I think Jim Miller's going to take the decision win in his own backyard. So I've got Jim Miller to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, it's a great fight, man. And just one thing to mention really quickly, because Clay Guida's 37 years old, Jim Miller's 35. Guida's first pro fight was 2003, Jim Miller's was 2005. They're both lightweights. They've got 96 fights between them. So it's crazy how these guys have never met before inside the cage. Like, it's nuts.
That is very true. Yeah, I didn't think of it. Yeah,
I checked the records the other day just to double check that I was right in my thinking, because yeah, it's just crazy that they've never met, but now they do. And even still at this oldish age, it's still a great fight, and it's still a good stylistic fight as well. Now, obviously, we've got Clay Guida. Clay Guida was on a little bit of a resurgence as of late. You know, a lot of people were writing him off after the Brian Ortega loss, but then he looked great against Eric Koch. He knocked Joe Lawson out in just over a minute. Charles Oliveira beat him, but, you know, Charles Oliveira's a beast, man. Finished him in round 1. Also finished Miller in round 1 as well. So you sort of got to write that fight off from both sides. And then, obviously, the BJ Penn fight. And even me, I had a bet on Clay Guida in that fight against BJ Penn, and it got me worried a little bit early on. I was really surprised with how much success BJ Penn had early on against Guida. I just didn't expect it at all. So I'm sort of thinking that resurgence may be wearing off a little bit now. And, you know, you can say the same thing for Jim Miller in a way, because Jim Miller went through a real bad patch. But as you mentioned, John, he's got Lyme disease. It's something that I don't know too much about it. I'm not a doctor, but I believe it's not something that goes away. He'll carry it for the rest of his life. But when he was going through the bad spells and he was really struggling, like in that Trinaldo fight, he was in the court, he was in his corner after, I think, round 1 and round 2, basically just saying, I've got nothing left to his corner team, really struggling with his cardio. But I think he was really struggling and trying to learn and adapt. how to be a mixed martial artist, train and fight whilst you've got this, this unfortunate disease. And he said on recent interviews that, and in fact after his post-fight interview against Jason Gonzalez, I bet Jason Gonzalez at plus money in that fight, but Miller looked really good, and he even said afterwards, after the fight, that he's just learned to deal with it now in regards to his medication and his supplements and all that surrounding his training and then his fighting as well. So it looks like he's gone through a little bit of a bad spell due to, again, a little bit of age, a tiny bit of decline, but obviously the disease, and now he's on a little bit of a resurgence himself, it seems. I know he's 1-2 in his last two, but like I say, you write the Do Bronx Oliveira fight off like we've just done with Guida, and he's got wins against Alex White and Jason Gonzalez, who aren't the best competition, but you look good against them, and that's what's important. The key thing for me in this fight, though, is we've got a southpaw versus orthodox scenario. So Jim Miller's still got that killer straight left. Guida does move a little bit, so I'm not sure how much. Well, he moves a fucking lot, but I don't know. I don't know how much Miller actually lands on him. Maybe he drops round one trying to land strikes, but then Guida slows down a little bit and he starts to pick his striking up. I'm not too sure. Miller's got to cut off the cage though against Guida. He can't be chasing him around because it's going to be a long night for him if he tries to do something like that. But then again, Miller's a vet. He's going to know all this shit. It's not it's not something that he's learning and stuff like that. He's going to know that he needs to cut off the cage against Guida. But the biggest difference in this fight for me is the ground game. So yes, Clay Guida loves his wrestling. He is a wrestler, and he does like to take his opponents down to the mat. But like you said, John, I think he's going to be really cautious trying to take Miller down in this fight because Miller won't get taken down easily, and he's also like light years ahead in regards to his grappling and his submission grappling. And when you look at Miller's record, he's got 30 wins, 16 have come via submission, so over 50% of his wins, 30 wins have come via submission. And then you go and look at Guida. Guida's lost 18 fights, and half of those, 50%, 9 of those fights have come via submission, and most of them have been rear naked chokes as well. He seems to be very easy to submit once you've got him to the mat and you've got time to work on him. If you're a good enough grappler, which Miller actually is, And I feel that Guida, I don't know, it's weird. The last time I saw Guida tap with a rear naked choke, he tapped and he stood up and started running around the cage with a smile on his face, and it's almost like he doesn't give a fuck. Like when he gets tapped, it's like he does not care at all, and it's very scary when he's coming up against Jim Miller, who is a legit grappler. He will roll on him if he gets in a dominant position for sure. And ultimately, that's where I think the fight lies, because Guida's going to frustrate Miller, really. I feel like Miller's going to struggle to land. He's not like a super high volume guy anyway, but he loves that straight left. And if he doesn't cut the cage off effectively early on, and Guida just doesn't stop moving, and he won't stop moving for an entire 3 rounds, even though he does slow down a little bit. I just feel that Guida's going to frustrate Miller, and at some point Miller's going to shoot in. And I don't think he'll be able to get a hold of Guida and pin him against the cage, at least not very easily anyway. I think it's going to have to be shooting a double or a single, and then trying to chain wrestle if he doesn't get him down, to then put him down on the mat. And I feel that if Miller's got like 90 seconds, 2 minutes to work on the mat, I feel like he's going to dominate Guida on the mat. And like I say, we've seen Guida tap 9 times with most of them being chokes, and I could see the same thing happening here. So I'm actually going to pick Jim Miller to win by finish. I'm going to take him to win by submission. And in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, we've got Joaquim Silva versus Nasrat Naqparast. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to seeing this fight, especially Joaquim Silva after his fight of the night showdown with Jared Gordon. Back in December now, man. That time flies when you're looking. That was back in December, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him back in action, because that was a really fun fight, and it was it was a wild back and forth, both guys swinging, and yeah, I think this fight is I don't think it's going to be quite as violent and quite as back and forth, slugging it out, but I think it still has the potential to be quite a fun fight. And what we saw from Silva in that fight is just how aggressively he comes out swinging, and over and over again, he was just throwing that combination of the big overhand right followed up by the big left hook, and he wasn't just popping them out there or firing them out at 70-75%, trying to put as much speed into them as well. He was throwing it with everything he had. He was trying to knock Gerald Gordon's head off his shoulders with every single attempt at landing that combination. And as we saw the fight go on, we saw both guys tire and tire badly as well. It got really sloppy towards the latter stages, and neither guy had much left in the tank. I know obviously Silva had enough in the tank to finish Gordon in that fight, but really it was just two guys really sloppily punching out while exhausted, and nothing against them, man, because they'd put into one hell of a fight for the previous 10 minutes, but yeah, it did worry me how much effort and the efficiency of Joaquim Silva and his striking, especially as he was pretty wild with it. But Naqparast, we've seen him a couple of times in the 3 times actually now in the UFC octagon. Obviously lost his debut to Marcin Hell via decision, but he's come back with 2 decision wins himself over Mark DeCasey and Thibaut Gouti as well in his most recent outing in October last year. He's only young and obviously trains at a good gym. Obviously he comes from Hamburg, but I think he does his training over at TriStar, and he's an interesting prospect because he's one of these guys that he looks very much like a TriStar fighter. He's quite I don't want to say methodical, but he's very much he counter strikes. He tends to hang around on the outside and circle around the fence, and then he'll come and attack in a flurry. And it's not always perfect technique. I mean, he did, especially in that Gouti fight, in his last fight, he did tend to throw quite a few wild hooks and things like that in his 4 or 5 punch combinations, but he was efficient, and he was backing Gouti up when he needed to. He was avoiding danger by constantly moving, and that's one thing that he is constantly on the move. He's constantly side to side. He's a hard target to pin down and really and really just keep in front of you to land strikes on over and over on a regular basis. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether Silva tries to take the fight down to the ground. If my memory serves me correct, I don't think Naqparast has been taken down in either of his last 2 fights. Obviously, he was taken down against Marcin Held on several occasions, and obviously that cost him the fight. But his last 2 fights, he's managed to keep both of them standing, and he's played into his favour. And I'm quite torn as to how this is going to play out, because obviously, like I say, with Naqparast staying on the outside and counter striking and coming forward with these flurries, sometimes it's easy to get yourself either pinned against the fence by someone who does want to grapple with you, or sometimes it doesn't always look good if you're going up against someone who's aggressive, who's marching forward and throwing heavy bombs like Silva will do, like he did in his last fight. And yeah, it's one of those where if it does go to the judges' scorecards, which I think this fight will, then it's one that can go either way, especially if Silva does land a takedown or 2 across a couple of rounds. It can really then start to get very, very close, and sometimes closer than it needs to be. But having said that, I'm going with Naqparast to win this fight. I think that he is the more efficient striker. I think he's the more technical striker of the 2. I think Silva overcommits to a lot of strikes, like I say, especially that overhand right left hook combination, which I think Naqparast will be able to take advantage of. I'm not sure whether Naqparast has got that finishing power, because he all 3 of his fights so far in the UFC have gone to a decision. I know his record before he got into the UFC was very good. I think he'd put all of his opponents away. We haven't yet seen that in the UFC. I don't know whether he's just being more cautious because he's obviously on the big stage now. I don't know. He did rock Gouti in their last fight, but he wasn't able to put him away. I think that was in the 3rd round as well. So he shows that he's also got he can still swing and land in the 3rd round and land with some power. But yeah, I think he's going to go with that pretty cautious approach on the outside. A lot of movement, a lot of footwork, a lot of head movement. attacking in flurries, and I think he's going to land on Silva. I think Silva's going to be the more static target. I think he's going to be the more hittable of the two guys, and if Haqparast does avoid this fight going to the ground, or if he avoids being pressed against the fence for any amount of time in each of the rounds, I think he's going to come out of this fight with a decision victory. So I'm going with Haqparast to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, it's a really good fight, and I actually really like both guys. Haqparast is someone that's grown on me. Admittedly, I wasn't too sure on him early on in his UFC career, but the more I see him, the more I really like his skills. And he's 23 years old. Obviously, you mentioned it, John. He's at TriStar, splits a little bit with King's MMA as well, with Master Rafael Cordero over there, who is one of the world's greatest Muay Thai coaches. So he's got a good team behind him for development for sure. And as for Joaquim Silva, like, how can you not love that guy? He's cool as a cucumber inside the cage. He comes forward, he'll eat shots to give shots, and he's just a really fun guy to watch. Now, again, in this fight, you've got the southpaw of Haqparast versus the orthodox stance of Joaquim Silva, which I think is going to play a part again in this fight. And with Joaquim Silva, his movement is very Muay Thai based, so it's not exactly like his Shaman Marias, for example, but it's very slow and methodical and coming forward and throwing hard, fast counters, opposed to real crazy movement and, darting around the cage like we've just spoken about Clay Guida, that sort of style. He's not like that. It's very, like I say, methodical and calculated and just stalking his opponent. Now, this is where I think it's going to be an issue for him, because Nasrat Haqparast he's got quick movement, he's got lightning fast hands, and he fucking darts in at some mental angles, like it almost as if you're shocked that he's landed, because he's come in at such a weird angle. But that left hand of Haqparast is accurate and it's hard. He throws it with heat. He's got cardio to do it for 3 rounds. And I think against someone that is quite static like Joaquim Silva, I think it's going to be a bit of an easier fight for him than his last few. I mean, even Gouty moves more than what Silva does. Not a huge amount more, but his movement is there a little bit, and Gouty's more defensive, so he will make Haqparast come forward and work that a little bit more. But Joaquim Silva doesn't take many back steps, so I think he's going to be there to be hit. And you look back at Haqparast's fight before Gouty, you've got Mark Diakese, and Mark's a super technical fighter. He's got great fundamentals. He's also quick as well, much quicker than Joaquim Silva, and he can be quite awkward when he wants to be as well inside the cage, with how elusive he is. So the fact that Haqparast dealt with that and won a decision tells me that if he's beaten a quick, fundamentally sound but elusive fighter like Mark Diakese, he's going to have a lot more success against Joaquim Silva. And Silva has been rocked. Gordon rocked him bad. Yes, Joaquim Silva rocked Gordon as well. But Joaquim Silva got away with one in that last fight. And pains me to say it, I bet Joaquim Silva in that fight, I cashed the plus 175 dog. But he was losing that fight until Gordon really messed up his leg. And, he didn't really have much coming into that 3rd round, and Silva knocked him out. But this is where Haqparast has to be careful, because it's all well and good Haqparast coming in at these crazy angles, bursting forward, throwing heat. He's got to be defensively sound as well whilst he's striking, whilst he's coming forward. Because if one of those lead left hooks come from Joaquim Silva, as Haqparast is coming in with the southpaw style, he's going to come right around that lead hand of Haqparast and crack him on his chin. Now, Haqparast has got a good chin, he's tough, he's durable, but if Joaquim Silva's landing that sort of shot on him, landing hard shots over multiple rounds, it's going to be an early night. So Haqparast has to be careful of that. Now, again, for Silva, it's going to be really beneficial for him if he tries to come in and look for a couple of takedowns as well. But I don't see the fight being decided on takedowns and the ground game. It's not going to be won and lost on the mat. Haqparast has fought. He took on Marcin Held in his debut. It was a short notice debut, and that fight hit the mat quite a lot. Marcin Held has got a very good submission grappling game, and he couldn't really control and finish Haqparast like we thought he would do if the fight went to the mat. So I'm not sure exactly how much success Silva would have on the mat. So this is what I mean. I don't think it's going to be won and lost on the mat. I think it's going to be won and lost on the feet. And I just feel that the combinations that Haqparast throws, the volume that he racks up, the angles that he comes at, and just how hard and accurate that left hand is. You watch tape on him, and he lands that left hand more or less every single time. It's so on point, and it comes with a lot of power. I can genuinely see Haqparast rocking Joaquim Silva. But unlike Gordon, I don't think he's going to let Silva off the hook if that's the case and that happens. So I'm going to take Nasrat Haqparast to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next fight on the Newsome MMA main card, we've got Scott Holtzman versus Dong Hyun Ma. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one because I always enjoy a bit of hot sauce. He's always a fun fighter to watch. He's always in he's entertaining scraps. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in his last fight against Nick Lentz. I actually picked Holtzman to win that fight. I thought he was on a good run, 3 wins in a row against McBride, Darryl Horcher, and then a really impressive win against a dangerous Alan Patrick. Obviously landed those brutal elbows from the mount to get the win in that fight. And I thought he'd be too much for Nick Lentz. I thought Nick Lentz he's coming towards the tail end of his career. I know Scott Holtzman's 35 years old, but I thought he was getting better with every fight, and then he comes out and puts in a bit of a disappointing display against Nick Lentz, and he really got caught in the Nick Lentz trap where he was just pressed against the cage for too often in the first 2 rounds, and Nick Lentz was able to hold him there, keep him there, pressurise him, take him down a couple of times, and it wasn't until in the 3rd round when Holtzman really turned on the gas and started going for it and actually hurt Nick Lentz and rocked him and had him in some dangerous positions that he looked like he'd really started turning up for the fight. And he was quite disappointed because I was really looking forward to seeing what where Scott Holtzman would go from that fight if he got the win, but obviously it wasn't meant to be. And yeah, he's obviously coming into his fight now off the back of a defeat, but he's going up against Maestro Dong Hyun Ma, who again he's also coming off a defeat to Devontae Smith. That was that finish via strikes. Smith landed a shot to stun Ma, and then the follow up strikes put him away. And yeah, I'm torn on this one because Dong Hyun Ma, sometimes I think he looks good, and sometimes then I'm kind of like, nah, this guy isn't great. And obviously you look at his losses, Devontae Smith, I think Smith he's a good fighter. Then he was on a 3-fight win streak himself, and then he lost to Polo Reyes, Dominic Steele. I mean, Steele managed to take him down 4 or 5 times and eventually landed that big slam and the follow-up elbows to win. Polo Reyes caught him in the 3rd round and finished him. Devontae Smith put him away with strikes. Those wins, I mean, Damian Brown, obviously no longer with the UFC. I'm a big fan of Damian Brown. I think he's a really exciting fighter. But yeah, obviously he edged a very close split decision in that. Takanori Gomi put away in the 1st round, but man, Takanori Gomi's shot now. And then Brendan O'Reilly. No offense to Brendan O'Reilly, but I'm not particularly high on him either. So it's kind of hard to judge where Dong Hyun Ma is, and how he matches up against Holtzman. But I think Holtzman is going to be the better fighter of the two. I think he's going to be the more aggressive. I think he's going to be the more active of the two guys. I mean, we saw in Dong Hyun Ma's last fight against Devontae Smith, he was very hesitant, and for about the first 3.5 minutes of that fight, I don't think he landed a strike at all. I mean, he barely threw a strike, and I know that he favours that counter-punching style, and he's going up against a dangerous guy himself in Devontae Smith, so obviously doesn't want to offer out any opportunities to be caught by a big shot. But I mean, he was really inactive in that 1st round, and Devontae Smith really just was then able to land that shot and put him away with relative ease, and I think Scott Holtzman is going to be a guy that really pushes the pace in this fight. I think he's going to be pressuring Dong Hyun Ma. I think he's going to come in. He's another guy that we spoke about several guys today who on this podcast and on this fight card who are pretty wild and coming with that wild swinging, not always particularly technical approach. And I think Holtzman's another guy like that. I mean, he'll come in and he'll throw a lot of combinations, not always technical, attempt to land those big bombs, those big heavy shots, and then if it presses against the fence, and if he backs his opponent up, presses him against the cage, he doesn't mind mixing in a takedown as well, every now and then, which I really like, and it keeps his opponents always second guessing. And for me, I think that it's going to be Scott Holtzman who gets back into the win column out of the two guys. I think that he's going to be the more active. I think that occasionally Dong Hyun Ma will catch him with counter strikes coming in, but I don't know if he has the one punch knockout ability to really stop Holtzman continually attempting to land those flurries and those big wild combinations. I mean, a lot of Scott Holtzman's fights you can see go to a decision. I mean, there's some of the guys he's fought as well are quite heavy hitters. Josh Emmett, of course, Drew Dober, and then obviously his last defeat was to Nick Lentz, which I've spoke about. So I don't think he's going to get finished by Dong Hyun Ma. I don't think Dong Hyun Ma's got the finishing capabilities. So that to me just spells out that Scott Holtzman is going to be the more aggressive guy in there, and he's going to be the aggressor throughout. He's going to be the guy that's marching forward all the time. He's going to be the guy in the judges' eyes who looks like he's pressing the action. He looks like he's the more aggressive guy who wants to land the heavier shots, and that means it's going to be really hard for Dong Hyun Ma to make any impact in the judges' eyes if he does go the distance. And can I see Dong Hyun Ma going for the same sort of approach as Nick Lentz, that grinding, heavy grappling style? I don't know, maybe. I mean, he took Brendan O'Reilly down several times, but in his previous his previous two wins against Takanori Gomi and Damian Bryan, there wasn't really much wrestling or anything involved. He may try to spend a bit of time pressing him against the fence. He may have seen Nick Lentz's path to victory and try and follow suit. But Nick Lentz has been doing that for years, man, and that's his out and out style all the time. And yeah, I just think Scott Holtzman is going to have too much output for Dong Hyun Ma in this fight. I think he's going to be too aggressive, and I actually think that Scott Holtzman is I know he hasn't, apart from that Alan Patrick fight, I mean, he hasn't won a fight via stoppage since 2015. But I actually think he's going to get a stoppage later on in this fight. I think he's going to maintain his aggression. He can go hard for 3 rounds. Dong Hyun Ma has shown that he can be finished, and I think that's what Scott Holtzman's going to do. I think he's going to catch him with a flurry in round 3, and I think he's going to put away Dong Hyun Ma with strikes. So I'm going with Scott Holtzman to win this fight, and I think he's going to win via knockout in round 3.
Yeah, I mean, the line's wide on this fight. You've got Holtzman, who's sitting right now at minus 380. The comeback on Dong Hyun Ma is plus 315. So the line's super wide, and I tend to agree with it as well. I think that the fight is a little bit of a mismatch. I've got a funny feeling Scott Holtzman's just going to run through Ma. Whether it be striking or, shooting in for takedowns and getting some top control in there, landing some ground and pound and really making it ugly for Ma, I'm not too sure. I tend to think that the wrestling path is going to be a lot more prominent in this fight because Ma can crack, man. Like, he's not a shit fighter. He's got good striking and he's got power behind his strike, so I'm not sure why Holtzman would want to risk that. The one thing I will say, though, is even though I love Scott Holtzman, he had some very questionable IQ in that Nick Lentz fight, just constantly letting Lentz close the distance and, not trying to separate and exit away from the cage and just a few little things like that. It was obvious what Nick Lentz wanted to do inside the cage, and I wasn't sure Lentz was going to be overly successful, but he was successful with it. So, fair enough, Holtzman got took down once or twice round 1, but then, you need those in-cage adjustments to make sure that that's not happening further down the line in the fight, and they just weren't there. But in this fight, it's totally different. Yes, Dong Hyun Ma has got takedowns and he has looked like he's got a half-decent wrestling base in previous fights. I just don't think it's going to be anywhere close to the level of Scott Holtzman. And I feel that for Ma, it's keep it on the feet, keep distance, and try and knock him out. But when you actually look at Ma's record in the UFC, you know, he lost to Dominique Steele, who's no longer in the UFC. He lost to Marco Polo Reyes, who I don't know if he's going to be in the UFC much longer.
Yeah.
He beat Brendan O'Reilly. No offense to Brendan O'Reilly, he was 1-3 in the UFC. Takanori Gomi was as shot as you can possibly get. Damian Brown, I think you've got an argument for Damian to win that fight. I thought he was actually going to get the nod on the judges' scorecards. He didn't, and then he got knocked out by Devontae Smith. You know, granted, Devontae Smith's got power, but the point I'm trying to make here is his path in the UFC so far has not been amazing, and there's been some sketchy fights along the way as well. I feel that Holtzman is not going to be in too much danger on the feet, but he does need to be a little bit careful at the same time. However, I don't think it's going to be long into the fight before Holtzman does start looking to close the distance, pushing Mars back up against the cage, really making him work. Holtzman, I think, in this fight is going to have a massive strength advantage, so I don't see Mar really being able to exit off the cage very easily, and if he does, he's going to expend energy, and then that's going to affect his cardio down the stretch, which is only going to make it easier for Holtzman. Holtzman doesn't have amazing initial cardio. What I mean by that is his cardio drains relatively sort of quickly over the first 4 or 5 minutes, but he hits this brick wall where it doesn't get any lower, and it's not when he's totally gassed out. He's still got sort of like a third of his gas tank left, but he stays at that point. He can keep going, and he doesn't get any lower than that. So I feel that Holtzman's cardio is definitely going to hold up longer than Mars in this fight. I think he's going to score the takedowns. I think Mar's going to struggle to get back up. I think the Holtzman's going to land ground and pound. And I agree with you as well, John. I think later down the fight, when Mar's a little bit more tired, when Holtzman's having a lot more success, and when he's able to pass guard, he may even get mount. And I think once he starts transitioning on the mat, and he does get to a dominant position, even if it's half guard and he postures, I think a dominant position is going to come. I think he is going to posture, and I think he's going to rain down shots. So I'm going to take Scott Holtzman to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the final fight on the Newsome MMA main card, we've got Antonina Shevchenko versus Lucie Pudilova. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun fight between two females who predominantly want to strike, and who I think this fight will play out the majority on the feet. I mean, obviously we've seen Pudilova has the ability to put in really entertaining fights, as we saw in that Irina Aldana fight a couple of years. Well, it was only last year actually, back in September at UFC 228, and she's currently riding a two-fight skid against Aldana and Liz Carmouche. Obviously, Carmouche was taking her down, and Pudilova had nothing to match the ground game of Carmouche, and she couldn't really get to work on the feet like she'd like to. Antonina Shevchenko, very similar story. Very, very capable on the feet. Obviously, the sister of Valentina Shevchenko, so you'd expect her to be a good striker, have that good Muay Thai background as well. But she went up against Roxanne Modafferi, who was just ugly, made that fight ugly, man. And just pressured her against the fence, took her down, didn't let her get her back off the fence. And when Shevchenko did, she had some success with the striking, but same thing would happen again. She'd just get pressed too far against the fence and wouldn't be able to get her back off in time, and got the nod in of close split decision defeat to Modafferi back in April. But for me, I think this is a good fight for Antonina Shevchenko to get back in the win column. As I said, I think it's going to play out the majority of the time on the feet, which does suit both of these competitors. I mean, both these would prefer, I think, the fight to be standing than for it to go to the mat. But I think that Shevchenko is going to be the quicker out of the two girls. I think that Pudilova is, although they're both a very similar height, and I think actually Shevchenko has slightly longer reach. I think Pudilova seems longer. She's got longer legs, and she seems like she's a bit. I don't want to say this offensively because she's not slow in a striking or anything like that, but she just seems to just like, the word that keeps coming to mind is lurch, and I don't know why the word lurch keeps coming into my head, but so the strikes that come in seem to be like long lunging strikes, whereas Shevchenko's strikes seem to be a lot more cleaner and crisp and Shevchenko does mix combinations together very nicely, and then finishes them off with that body kick, and that's obviously from that background, striking background that she has. And I know Pudilova does like to utilise those long legs as well, more so with the front kicks and either to the body or even the front kick to the face. But I just think Shevchenko in this fight is going to be quicker. I think she gets in and out of range better than Pudilova does, and I think Pudilova quite often does have that height and reach advantage over people, so she can kind of keep them away from her with the jab or the front kick, and she tends to then start struggling when their opponent uses their footwork and their speed to get on the inside and either take her down like we saw in the Carmouche fight, or land nice crisp combinations like we saw in the Aldana fight. And unfortunately for Pudilova, I don't think she deserves to go 0-3 in the last 3 fights, because she is a decent fighter. Like I say, she put on one hell of a fight against Aldana, who we know is a dangerous in this weight class. But I do think that this fight is perfect for Shevchenko. I don't think she'll have to worry too much about takedowns and things like that. I think she will just be able to concentrate on her striking. And as I say, I think she cuts the better angles when coming in. I think she's quicker when she's coming in. I think she's crisper and cleaner with the striking. I like that she enters combinations with that body kick. And I think she'll be able to just use that speed over the course of 3 rounds to storm away on the judges' scorecards. I think that she's just going to be able to outland Pudilova. I think Pudilova's quite often going to be on the outside trying to work the jab and that front kick. But I think Shevchenko's going to be able to get in and out of range, land 2 or 3 shots while she's in, get back out, land a body kick from the outside, and then just use her footwork to make her way back inside. And I think this is a good fight for Shevchenko to get back in the win column, which I think she will do. I think it'll go the distance. I don't think Shevchenko will put Pudilova away. Pudilova's tough, and she can definitely battle it out, as we saw in that Aldana fight. So I think it's going to go the distance, but I think Shevchenko is going to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I think people still aren't really that sold on Shevchenko, and I can't say I am especially, but I do feel that she takes a lot of unnecessary shit. Like, when she's not fighting somebody like Modafferi who can take her down, she can really flourish with her striking, and actually her fundamentals, a distance management and an awareness of danger are actually at a decently high level for the division, in my opinion. She does tend to dart in and out of range, and like I say, the recognition of danger and just moving out of the way of it, and a timing with her strikes, she can really cause a lot of problems. Now, from Pudilova's point of view, she is a fighter that I actually really, really like to watch. She's fun. She doesn't stop. She's like a zombie. You know, the damage that Aldana inflicted on her. Yes, she inflicted a lot of damage on Aldana as well, but the damage that Aldana inflicted on her, and she just kept on walking through it time and time again throughout 15 minutes. It was just insane to see. Like I say, it was like watching a zombie. So the reason I think this fight is going to be pretty close is because Pudilova's got a really nice jab. So we saw that in the Aldana fight. Once she gets a jab going, she doubles and triples up on it, and everything comes from that jab, which, again, great fundamentals, and that's how you can really get your strikes off in MMA, by starting with the jab, because there's so many combinations and follow-up shots after that jab that can really land and cause damage on your opponent, especially with the 4-ounce gloves. But I don't feel that this jab's going to be that prominent in this fight, because again, we've got a stance clash. We've got Southpaw versus Orthodox, and when you've got a Southpaw versus Orthodox fighter, you've got that battle of the lead hand. So when it's Orthodox versus Orthodox or Southpaw versus Southpaw, the jab can come in the gap straight down the middle, but it's not like that when you've got a stance clash. The battle for that lead hand is very is a very complex scenario when you've got these stance styles. So I think Pudilova, to actually land that jab, I just don't see it landing all that often. So that's one side of her game that I think is gonna be massively affected, because especially against a decorated striker in Shevchenko, which she is. You know, you look back at a Muay Thai and a kickboxing record, it's good. She is a lifelong striker, and I just feel that Shevchenko isn't going to allow these jabs to come through, especially when you're battling for that lead hand. She's going to be very aware of it. She's going to be backing off as well, moving outside of range. I just feel that Pudilova is going to have a tough time landing the jab. Therefore, her combinations and her punches are going to have to come from a different area, different techniques. She's going to have to lead with different strikes. And I think it's going to be a little bit different in there for Pudilova in this fight. Whereas Shevchenko, on the other hand, she's never really dealt with anyone that can come forward, eat shots and come forward and really press the fight for a full 15 minutes. It don't make a difference how much Shevchenko hurts Pudilova. She is going to come forward. And I don't believe Shevchenko is going to hurt Pudilova anywhere near as much as Aldana did. So I've got no doubts that Shevchenko isn't going to push... I've got no doubts that Shevchenko is going to push Pudilova back. I think it's just going to be Pudilova just waving forward. So Shevchenko's going to spend a lot of time on the back foot in this fight, and it's almost going to be, she's almost going to have to fight like how Machida used to fight, constantly on the back foot, being technical, pot shotting, landing the technical strikes and trying to win the fight that way. But I feel that she is going to win the fight that way. Like I say, Pudilova is going to predominantly lose a jab quite a lot in this fight, and therefore I think she's going to have to come forward in bursts, flurry, and just use some unorthodox strikes and strikes that she wouldn't normally use in a fight. And I just feel things are going to be a little bit different in there for Pudilova, whereas for Shevchenko it's not going to be entirely different. She's just going to be on the back foot a little more than what she's normally on the back foot for. So from that perspective, I do favour Shevchenko in this fight. I don't think there's going to be a finish. So I'm going to take Antonina Shevchenko to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And with the Newsome MMA main card complete, we'll now quick fire off the remaining Newsome MMA prelims. And first up is Trevin Giles versus Gerald Meerschaert. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I was a fan of Trevin Giles going into that Zach Cummins fight. I mean, it looked dangerous. Couple of nice wins via finish, and then obviously came into a veteran in Zach Cummins. Who Zach Cummins even said, man, I interviewed Zach Cummins after that fight, and he said that Giles caused him problems. His movement was good. He was hard to hit. He hit hard himself. Zach Cummins obviously, of course, did eventually wobble Giles and land on the guillotine and get the win, but yeah, Giles, he's a guy that I'm still excited to see. I still think he looks like he's got something there, and he can be a dangerous guy in this division now. Gerald Meerschaert, I mean, don't know what to say about this guy, man, because sometimes he looks really dangerous, and then sometimes he just he doesn't, man. I mean, a lot of his wins come via submission. His best work is done on the ground. We know that. We know he's going to shoot for the takedown, but he's lost his last two fights. I mean, Jack Manson got him in that guillotine in the first round of their fight back in December, and then he fought Kevin Holland in March. He's having a really weird fight that he lost a split decision. I mean, he looked absolutely shattered after like 2.5 minutes of that fight, and I know it went to a decision, but a lot of the time he's just spent hanging on to Kevin Holland against the fence, while Kevin Holland was just kind of talking to the crowd about how his displeasure at how the fight was playing out, and it was just really weird to watch unfold. And yeah, it's I mean, for me, I just can't back a guy in Meerschaert whose cardio just looked hammered the way it did in that Kevin Holland fight. I mean, like I say, he shot for a couple of takedowns and he just looked absolutely dead to the world after 2 or 3 minutes, and he slowed right down. His takedown attempts got sloppy. Like I say, he did spend quite a lot of time pressing Holland against the fence and kind of wearing on him, trying to get that takedown. And I think Holland could have made that fight a lot more comfortable in his favour. I mean, he was just kind of messing around, like I've already mentioned. So yeah, I just can't back him, and for that reason, I'm going to have to favour Trevin Giles. And I think that if Meerschaert tries to take the fight to the mat several times and he's unsuccessful, he starts to tire out again, I think that Trevin Giles can finish him, and I think he can finish him with strikes. And it could be one of those cases where Meerschaert tries for the takedown, he gets stuffed and he kind of flops to his back, and then Trevin Giles just postures up and starts raining down blows. We've seen that he can finish people with ground and pound before. We saw that in the Bogdanovic fight, and yeah, I think Trevin Giles is going to get the fight finished. I think he's going to get it finished on the mat in late in round 2 in this fight. So I've got Trevin Giles to win this fight via knockout in round 2.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Trevin Giles as well. The younger guy, I do think it's a relatively close fight though. But the one thing that Trevin Giles needs to do is he needs to stay off the mat, because if he gets taken down and Meerschaert's in top control, even if Meerschaert's a little bit tired, I do think he'll be able to work Giles, and I do think he'll be able to find a submission. But it's like you said, Johnny. It's tough to pick Meerschaert because he is so hit and miss. You just don't know what you just don't know what you're gonna get inside the cage. You don't know whether you're gonna get a great performance or a substandard one. But lately, it's been more substandard than anything else. And I feel that unless Giles takes him down, I don't think the fight is gonna hit the mat. And it could be like the Ryan James fight. Ryan James took Meerschaert down and he paid for it. That's how I would envisage what would happen if Giles takes him down. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Meerschaert will be desperate to get the fight to the mat once he feels the power and on the feet of Giles, and also the speed advantage which he'll have in his movement as well. And I think he'll be desperate to get the takedowns, but that's when takedowns don't come. So I think that Meerschaert, in trying to take Giles down constantly and failing, I think it's going to hurt him mentally inside the fight. It's going to be demoralising for him, and I think it's going to affect his cardio. I think Giles is going to come on strong later in the fight, put combinations together, body and head, and I think he's going to knock Gerald Meerschaert out. So I'm going to take Trevin Giles to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. And in the next fight, we've got Darko Stosic versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Now, just quickly, I don't think I butchered Nzechukwu's name there. I can confirm that spending a week in the mirror saying Nzechukwu, if you say it 5 times, it ain't giving no Candyman shit. It's not going to pop up in your bathroom with bees. You can do it. We can all get past that. Kennedy Nzechukwu. John, I hope you're not going to butcher it. Who have you got?
Yeah, interesting fight between Darko Stosic and Kennedy and Nzechukwu in this one, and yeah, I mean, Darko Stosic has really let me down, man. I mean, I was excited to see this guy, like a lot of people, the Mirko Crocop protege and all that, but I mean, he's 2 wins in the UFC so far. Obviously, he beat Jeremy Kimball, but I think Kimball retired after that fight, actually, if I remember correctly. Kimball he was actually landing all right in that fight as well. He was landing shots on Stosic and having some success in the stand-up, and then he went for that takedown, and obviously he was stuffed, and he got finished with the ground and pound. But then in the last fight, I mean, Darko Stosic really disappointed me against Devin Clark. I mean, he was taken down a couple of times. He just didn't really have any kind of output. He just looked sloppy all round, really, and I wasn't impressed particularly at all in the size. There's not really anything that I can look at and think, oh yeah, he did that well, he did this well, and yeah, he's going up against a dangerous guy in Kennedy Nzechukwu, and he was unlucky to lose his last fight to Paul Craig. I mean, he fell foul to the typical Paul Craig style, lure you in with allowing you to beat him up for pretty much 90% of the fight, and then catch you in a submission in the last minute of the fight. That's what Paul Craig does, and he does it well. But yeah, he did kind of have his way with Paul Craig in that fight. He was definitely the better fighter standing. He definitely landed the more damage. He was putting himself in such dangerous positions against Craig. It was kind of it was one of those things where you kind of, especially the triangle that eventually finished him late in the 3rd round. It was one of those ones where you kind of like shouting at your TV to just back out of there, man. Just don't engage with him on the ground. Just back up, let him stand up, and then just keep beating him up on the feet. And unfortunately, he didn't do that. He kept going in. He obviously, I like the fact that he had confidence in his ability to try and nullify Craig's ground game. He thought that he could land ground and pound and be all right in there and hold his own. And I do admire that. I always admire that in fighters, if they do think they can hang with someone in their element. But unfortunately, it doesn't always pay off. But yeah, I saw enough in Kennedy Nzechukwu that I thought and I do think that he has the ability to beat Stosic, and I do think he will in this fight. I think it'll be I do think it's going to go to the decision, because Stosic looks pretty tough to put away. But I think he's going to outland him. I think he's going to land the heavier strikes. I haven't seen a great deal from Stosic on the feet that really impresses me. I mean, he has got okay takedowns. I mean, the Kimball takedown was was from his background in judo. He was a nice judo throw when Kimball came marching in. Will he Stosic try and take this fight to the ground? I don't know. I mean, possibly, but and Nzechukwu kind of held his own against Paul Craig when he tried to take the fight to the ground, but which resulted in Paul Craig obviously having to pull guard quite often. But yeah, I think Nzechukwu is going to do enough in this fight. I think he's going to be the better striker of the two. I think he will be able to keep it standing. I think he will land the heavier shots, and I think he's going to defeat Stosic via decision.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I've been really disappointed with Stosic. I expected a lot more from him because he's, outside the UFC, he looked like a decent fighter, but when he's come inside the cage, he's just got a lot of bad traits, man. Like he's got very minimal volume. He still slows and tires as well with that minimal volume. He moves forward very slow in a plodding manner, straight lines, no real crazy movement, no head movement, and just like I say, just stalks in straight lines. And he has bombs, he wings bombs, but again, with the volume, they come, they don't come very often. And in this fight, I think that Kennedy's got a lot of physical advantages. So he's 6'5", he's 5 inches taller, he's got a 7-inch reach advantage. Again, it seems to be the common theme of this card. We've got a southpaw versus an orthodox fighter, and I just feel that unless Stosic gets inside and wings a bomb at Kennedy, which is possible, and knocks him out, Stosic throws with heat when he does throw, I just feel that it's going to be a volume-based decision from Kennedy. The other things Stosic could maybe try and do is look for the takedowns. He did take Devin Clark down, but Kennedy seems to be, when he's gotten taken down in previous fights, it seems to be in the middle of the cage where, I don't think Stosic has got that speed and reactive ability to do that. It's going to be against the cage, and then trying to elevate somebody that's 6'5", long legs, I think it's going to be tough. And if he does get even a little bit relentless with that, it's only going to drain his cardio even more. He's got so much fucking muscle mass. So I do see a couple of paths for Stosic in this fight, but ultimately I just think Kennedy's going to be improving. He is still very green. That is one thing to mention in this fight. Stosic is by far the best fighter that he's fought. Arguably with Craig, I still think that Craig's better than what people give him credit for. But it's a tough fight for Kennedy compared to previous opposition for sure. So he has got to get that experience and develop, but at Fortis MMA, it's a great camp, great gym, so I feel that the developments are going to be there for a young fighter. And like I say, I don't feel that Kennedy's got that much of a killer instinct, and I think you absolutely need a killer instinct to not only drop Stosic, but to actually put the dude out as well. So I've just got a funny feeling Stosic is going to be most dangerous sort of the first half of round one, maybe the second half of round one as well. But if Kennedy gets into round 2 and 3, the volume's just going to add up. It's going to look better in the judges' scorecards. The kicks are going to come to the open body, and I think Nzechukwu is going to win a decision. So I've got Kennedy and Nzechukwu to win. I think he's going to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Mickey Gall versus Salim Touahri. John, who have you got?
Yeah, talking about people that we don't think look very impressive in their last fight, up steps Mickey Gall. Man, I thought he looked absolutely terrible against Diego Sanchez. And Mickey Gall's still that guy that keeps saying it all the time, every time we break down one of his fights. I don't even know what level he's at still. I mean, when you look at his fights, Mike Jackson, CM Punk, Sage Northcutt were his first 3 fights. 2 of those 3 are absolute joke fights. One of them, Sage Northcutt, is slightly less of a joke fight because Sage Northcutt obviously did have an all right background in mixed martial arts, and he was getting better for a youngster. Then obviously went up against his first real challenge in Randy Brown, and he lost. Then he went up against a guy, George Sullivan, who was definitely at the end of his career, and got that finish via rear naked choke. Then went up against a veteran in Diego Sanchez, who absolutely mauled him, really, let's be honest, for the entirety that the fight lasted, before getting put away by Sanchez. And I can't remember the last time Diego Sanchez put somebody away and finished them. And yeah, he just dominated Gall throughout. I know Gall said that I can't remember exactly what his reason was, that he said that he had absolutely zero energy. I can't remember whether it was bad weight cut or whether it was some kind of illness leading up to the fight. He did come out afterwards and say, this was up, I had no energy from the start, etc., etc. But Yeah, I just didn't look impressed at all by. I wasn't impressed at all by Mickey Gall and his last fight, and I'm still not sure that he what level he is, whether he is even UFC caliber. To be honest, he's going up against Touahri, who has been unfortunate to come up against two tough guys in his first two fights. Obviously, his debut was in 2017 against Wally Alves. Lost that fight by decision. Wally Alves is a bit of a beast. Tough fight to come in on your debut. He did manage to take a round off Wally Alves, if I remember correctly, and yeah, unfortunately, he did lose out to the better fighter in the end. Then he went up against Keita Nakamura, who is obviously a real veteran of the sport, very dangerous grappler. He's been around. He's seen a lot of people, gone up against a lot of tough guys, and yeah, he just about edged out Touahri, and I think Touahri is going to win this fight. I think he's going to be the better. I think he has got more of a jiu-jitsu background, more of a grappling background, which obviously is Mickey Gall's strength. But I think if the fight stays standing, I think that Touahri is going to be the better striker of the two. If the fight does go to the ground, will Mickey Gall be able to get Touahri to the ground? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, the more I see of Mickey Gall, the less impressed I seem to be nowadays. And I think if he does go to the ground, he will be able to get back to his feet. I mean, Mickey Gall's path to victory obviously is via his grappling. He's a good grappler. He's I think he's a brown belt, if I remember rightly, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he can submit you. I mean, we've seen that, especially the rear naked choke. All of his wins have come via rear naked choke. If he does take you back, there's every chance that he will get you in that rear naked choke. But I think that Touahri will have the ability to fend off any kind of ground attacks. I think he'll be able to win the fight in the stand-up exchanges, and I actually think he's going to finish Mickey Gall as well. And I'm going with Salim Touahri to win this fight. I think he's going to finish Mickey Gall in round 2.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite way, and I think I'm going to take a lot of shit for this. I'm going to pick Mickey Gall now. Admittedly, Mickey Gall hasn't looked that great. There's obviously he takes a lot of shit on social media for everything surrounding himself lately, to be fair.
I like Mickey Gall, might I add. I saw him after UFC 217 in New York, and he's a very good guy. He just lost that fight to Randy Brown, man. But he was a cool guy. He was happy to talk to all the fans and take loads of pictures with people and stuff outside. So I'm a fan of Mickey Gall.
Yeah, and like I say, I think in this fight, it's more me being unsure on Touahri. So, like you've already said, he is 0-2, but you look at the two people that he lost to, Wally Alves and Keita Nakamura. But I just feel that Mickey Gall's he is gonna pose some problems for Touahri in this fight. So I know Touahri is a decent grappler as well. Gall's a decent grappler. Gall's a slightly taller fighter, so he has got the ability to fight long if he can and if he wants to. If Touahri comes in, Touahri's going to have to work more in this fight, I think, than what Gall's going to have to work. But I feel that if Touahri comes in, he can get tied up with Gall. I think Gall can get the underhooks in. I think Gall's length can reap a leg, put Touahri on his back. And I think Gall's got a good chance of winning this fight. It's not going to be easy though, and if the fight doesn't hit the mat, Touahri is definitely the better striker, and if he gets inside and starts unleashing boxing combinations on Gall, then it's going to be another rough night for Gall. But Gall's looking in decent shape from what we've seen, better shape than what we've seen in previous fights. And the other thing to mention as well is if this does hit the scorecards, which I've got a funny feeling that it might. Mickey Gall is from New Jersey. You've got to worry about that decision if it's going to the judges' scorecards and it's a close fight. I don't think there is a finish in this fight. I think we're going to see a bit of everything. I'm not sure where the fight's going to be won and lost, but I do think we're going to see some striking. Obviously, all fights start standing. I think Touahri will have the advantage striking, and I feel that Gall's going to have the advantage on the mat. Even if he's on his back, I just feel that he might be able to get a sweep or get a reversal or stand up back to his feet and in a scramble, put Touahri on his back. I've got a funny feeling Touahri's going to be on his back in this fight and Gall's going to be able to work. So I think it's going to go to a decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. I'm going to take Mickey Gall to win. I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Jordan Espinosa versus Matt Schnell. John, who have you got?
Yeah, going from one guy, Mickey Gall, that we thought looked bad in his last fight, to one guy I thought looked really good in his last fight in Matt Schnell. I mean, I picked I picked Lou Smolka to win that fight. Due to the fact that I thought his ground game, his grappling, his submission skills would shine through, and man, was was I wrong, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. Match now looked fantastic. He looked really dangerous on the ground. His striking's got a lot better. But yeah, he beat Louis Smolka at his own game. He took him down a couple of times. I think he looked like he had a few good sweeps and then really worked for the submissions, and eventually he got that triangle choke and finished Smolka in the first round, and yeah, it was such an impressive performance. I wasn't really expecting that from Schnell, especially the way it was won, with him fighting fire with fire against Louis Smolka and battling it out with the in the submission game, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he fares in this fight. I think that obviously we know he's quite a tall guy for the weight class. He's got good height, good reach. I think Jordan Espinosa will have the speed advantage. Slightly smaller guy. We saw in his last fight against Eric Shelton that he had the speed advantage. We've seen him a couple of times in Dana White's Contender Series as well. He's got one finish via Darce choke, and then the other via strikes late in the very late, in fact, in the round 3. So he's a dangerous guy. Like I say, he's quick. He's quick with his strikes. He may have the slight speed advantage over Matt Schnell, but I do like the angles that Matt Schnell cuts. I like that he can fight long, but then also when he gets in close, he's got the ability to box in close, but then also take the fight to the mat, which and really work for those submissions, which is something we really saw in abundance in that last fight, the loose Smolka fight that I just mentioned. But yeah, I'm going with Matt Schnell to win this fight. I just think his all-round game, he's more dangerous than Espinosa. I think that Espinosa, as I say, will have a slight speed advantage, but I think that Schnell can possibly land a takedown or two throughout the fight. I think he'll cut angles well. I think he'll fight at range, using that slight reach advantage that he's got. Trains a fantastic team, obviously the American top team, and he just seems to be getting better with every fight. So yeah, I think that Matt Schnell's going to win this fight. I think he's going to go to a decision, but I think that Matt Schnell is going to come out victorious.
Yeah, it's another good fight. This Jordan Espinosa is a fighter that I really like. You know, again, he's just a quick fighter. He comes in at some crazy angles and darts in and out and throws some nice strikes. He's got explosive takedowns. Top game not so heavy, but you know, it's stuff that the judges like to see in close fights. The problem I've got with Jordan Espinosa though is he's got tall man's defense for a short guy, which is it's weird to even say, but it's true. He has, like, he'll come in and he'll throw his strikes in combinations, but he'll dart back out of range and he'll just leave his chin way open in the air, and he gets tagged with it, man. You see it in most of his fights, especially in his last fight against Eric Shelton, a fight that I actually thought was a lot closer than what the judges made it out to be. But Eric Shelton, that first round was off for him, but the second and third round, he was really making Espinosa pay. Every time he came in and Espinosa threw his strikes and he exited, those counter shots would then just come in from Shelton, really sharp, really accurate, and that's just because Espinosa just goes back in a straight line. He jumps back in a straight line with his chin wide open, and I think Schnell's really going to be able to take advantage of this because he looks a lot sharper with his striking. It's like he's reading the fights a lot better as well, and I just feel that when Espinosa's coming in, I do think Schnell's going to have a little bit of problems early on in regards to the speed of Espinosa. He's not fought anybody as fast as Espinosa, so this is my concern with Schnell. But for Schnell, once he makes adjustments inside the cage, I think he's really going to be able to start landing on Espinosa and, like I say, just tagging him up as he's going out of range. And Schnell's also got a decent ground game and decent wrestling as well, so that's sort of a plan B for him. I like Schnell to win in this fight. I don't think he's going to finish Espinosa. I don't think there's going to be a finish in this fight. If there's a finish, it's probably going to be on Espinosa's side, but I do feel it's going to go to the judges' scorecards. And I just feel the volume's going to be there on Schnell. And I think if Espinosa is getting tagged up, he's going to run out of ideas a little bit later on in the fight. So I've got Matt Schnell to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got Lauren Murphy versus Mara Romero Barella. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is this is a fight between people that I'm still not really sure of. I mean, Lauren Murphy, I'm not particularly high on at all. Obviously, she's only got, I think, one win since 2016, which came against Barb Honchak at the Ultimate Fighter 26 finale back in 2017. Lost the most recent fight to Ciara Eubanks. Ciara Eubanks just dominated that fight, was a better boxer. Took Lauren Murphy down a couple of times in that fight as well. Obviously, in the Ultimate Fighter, she lost to Nico Montagna. She lost to Caitlin Chukagian. Lise Carmouche, Sarah McMahon, both those fighters took her down as well. She's going up against Mara Barella, who only has one loss since 2015. She's she's got one no contest, but besides that, I think she's won 6 or 7 fights with her only defeat coming against Chukagian, who's at the top end of the division. She won a most recent fight against Talia Santos via close split decision, took Santos down a couple of times in that fight, had a bit of top control. Fight before Chukagian, she beat Kalindra Faria via rear naked choke in the first round, got the fight to the mat and worked for the choke. And yeah, I think that Barella's going to win this fight. I mean, at this moment in time, I think Lauren Murphy's fought tougher competition throughout her career. Maybe why she has that worst record, and she's lost. I mean, like I say, I think it's 4 of the last 6 that she's lost now. But she's gone up against some tough females and some household names that have been around in the female weight classes for a long time. Like I mentioned, Sarah McMahon, Liz Carmouche, people like that. But yeah, I think Barella's going to be able to edge this fight. I mean, I think it's going to be quite a close fight. I think it's going to be a fight where neither fighter really stands out massively. I mean, they both have the ability to take the fight to the ground, although neither of them particularly massively dominant there. They're not big, heavy, strong wrestlers or anything like that. I think maybe Barella just edges it on the ground and taking the fight to the mat. I mean, you look through her record, and she has got several wins via armbar, and obviously she's got that rear naked choke against Farrier that I mentioned. But yeah, I think this is going to be a close fight throughout, but I can just see Mara Barella just edging it in the judges' scorecard. I think she's just going to do slightly more than Lauren Murphy. I think maybe she might snatch a takedown at the end of a couple of the rounds that just sway the decision slightly in her favour. And yeah, like I say, I'm not massively high on Lauren Murphy, and she's 36 now. She's probably only got a couple of years left in her at the top level as well. And yeah, I just think Barella, slightly younger fighter, I think she's just going to edge this fight and take a close decision.
Yeah, man, I'm not a massive fan of Lauren Murphy at all. I'm not yet convinced that she's UFC caliber. I just don't know where she really excels. She's one of those fighters that is a jack of all trades, master of none. I just don't know where she wins this fight. I think the striking's very close. I would probably just edge it to Barella, but I think this fight is going to predominantly take place with a lot of clinch work against the cage. I do think the fight hits the mat a couple of times, courtesy of Barella taking Murphy down. So I feel like it's going to be one of those ugly grinding decisions where Murphy's just really struggling to deal with the dominance of Barella. So I think it's going to go to a decision. I'm not sure we see a finish. If we do see a finish, again, I think it's going to come on the side of Barella, but I'm picking it to hit the scorecards. So I think Mara Romero Barella's going to win. I think she's going to win via decision. And in the next fight, we've got a short notice fight here for one fighter. Anyway, we've got Claudio Silva versus the newcomer, the short notice debutant, Cole Williams. Obviously, Claudio Silva was supposed to fight Ramazan Emeev. Emeev struggled with visa issues. It's disappointing. I was massively high on Emeev in that fight. But now we've got Claudio Silva, Cole Williams. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to that fight with Emeev. I'm really disappointed that obviously isn't playing out. Hopefully we get to see that later down the line. But yeah, we know what we're going to get with Claudio Silva, a guy who's got heavy top pressure, wants to get the fight to the mat, wants to utilise his very good background in grappling jiu-jitsu. He's a decorated black belt. He's like I say, he's a dangerous guy that just unfortunately hasn't had the chance to fight enough. I'm really glad to see that this is the third time we'll have seen him in just over a year. Obviously, he won that fight, that close split decision against Leon Edwards in Leon Edwards' debut fight back in 2014. Edged it with the takedowns and the top control. Then 4 years out of the game, came back against Nordine Taleb, won via rear naked choke, and then had that really exciting fight with Danny Roberts where it was a real back and forth, and then obviously won a bit of a contentious victory via armbar in the round 3 when I think he was given as a verbal submission. Danny Roberts protested and said that he didn't submit, but there was a yelp in pain when the armbar was locked in, and obviously got him the victory. And for me, I'll be honest, I've only seen very little of Cole Williams in his last fight against Charlie Brown. It looked like he tried to utilise his takedown and take the fight to the mat. I think he splits his record of 4 wins have come via knockout, 4 wins have come via submission, and then 3 decision wins. The 2 fights prior to the Charlie Brown fight have both come via stoppage in round 1 via strikes. My concern is this guy's 35 years old. Obviously, some people do get into the sport later than others and make their move to the big leagues later than others, and obviously it's a short notice fight. But I just worry in this fight whether he is going to be totally outclassed by a guy who is very decorated on the ground. But having said that, Claudio Silva's a guy who does tend to tire. He does tend to fatigue as the fight goes on. He does look very good early on, but then he can struggle if you start to stuff a couple of his takedowns, and he is hittable. Cole Williams has, like I say, has got 4 of his wins via knockouts, and does he have the potential to cause an upset on his debut? Possibly. I mean, like I say, if he can keep the fight upright, then Claudio Silva's the kind of guy that you'd think, oh, possibly I can beat this guy standing because he does all his wizardry on the ground. But now I think that from what I've seen, I think Cole Williams does prefer the fight to go to the mat. He definitely did in his last fight against Charlie Brown. But no, I think Claudio Silva's going to be too much. I think at some point he's going to be able to take Cole Williams down, and I think he's going to be able to get to a dominant position, land a bit of ground and pound, which will open up a submission attempt, possibly work his way to mount. Cole Williams turns over and gives up his back, and Silva gets the rear naked choke. And I think he's going to get it done in the first round as well. I think it's going to be quite late in the first round, but I think it's going to be a first round submission victory for Claudio Silva.
Yeah, you do have to worry about a 35-year-old guy coming in to the UFC on his debut on, like I say, a week's notice, really short notice against a guy the caliber of Claudio Silva, because although I do think Silva is very beatable, technically he's never lost. He's got 1 loss on his record, but that was a DQ in his debut in 2007. So, since then, he's on a 13-fight win streak, including some really good names as well.
Yeah.
And I do feel he's beatable on the feet, though, and Cole Williams has to keep this fight standing, because if he doesn't, and if it goes to the mat, it's going to be a wrap, I think. Claudio Silva's just too good on the mat. His transitions, just his solid top control, heavy top control, and like I say, his grappling pedigree is just unbelievable. So Cole Williams has to keep it on the feet. Can he knock Silva out? I think anybody that's in the UFC could potentially knock Silva out. But then again, 14 men have tried, and none of them have succeeded. Cole Williams does have 3 knockouts in his last 5 fights, but I feel the fight's going to hit the mat at some point before Silva's knocked out. Therefore, I don't think Silva's going to get knocked out. I think Silva's going to get the fight to the mat. I think he's going to roll on him. I think he's going to submit him. So I've got Claudio Silva to win. I'm going to take him to win via submission. And in the final fight of the Newsome MMA Prelims, we've got the 2 newcomers. We've got Miranda Granger versus Hannah Goldie. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is your classic striker versus grappler matchup. Miranda Granger, if you look at her record, I mean, she's definitely predominantly the grappler. She's dangerous on the ground as well. If you look, all of her fights have been won either 5 of the 6 in the first round and then 1 second round victory. You've got guillotine, armbar, guillotine, strikes, and rear naked choke and armbar. So it tells you that she's a finisher, and she will want to get this fight to the match. She's a taller fighter, so she'll have the height and the reach advantage. But yeah, she will want to get this fight to the mat, and she's going up against the shorter, stockier Hannah Goldie. who's more of a striker, more of a boxer. We've seen her in Contender Series in her last fight to get the victory via decision. She does only have one stoppage win on a record, and that was back in February last year when she beat Vanessa Grimes via knockout in the second round. I fancy the grappler in this one. I just think that she's if she can get to the fight to the mat, I think she's going to be able to be dangerous and really work that dangerous submission game of hers. And whether she can pull off a submission, I don't know. History suggests that she would with a record. So I'm going to edge on the side that she's going to be able to catch Hannah Goldie in something if she can get it to the mat. If she can't get it to the mat, I think it's going to be a long 3 rounds, and I think that Hannah Goldie is going to be able to piece her up on the feet. But I'm going with Miranda Granger to win this fight, and I think she wins via submission in round 2.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite way here, but I do think it's a really close fight. You know, like you've already said, John, we've got the striker in Goldie and the grappler in Granger, and actually the grappling of Granger is very, very good. Like, go and watch tape on it, you know, well, for the level of competition that she's faced. But the grappling looks like she's got some decent fundamentals down there, but she's got to get it down there. Now, how she gets the fights to the mat from what I've seen is she likes to tie up against the cage, and then she likes to look for the trips and the throws to drag her opponents down to the mat some way, some form, but it's against the cage. And Hannah Goldie is a very stocky, strong fighter, so I feel that when it gets into the clinch positions against the cage, I think Goldie's going to have a lot more success, you know, sort of trying to bully her a little bit inside the clinch, more success than what Granger's previous opponents have put up anyway. So I do think that Goldie can nullify the clinch work, which should prevent her from getting taken down, and then she can just start working her striking. And I don't think it's anything phenomenal, but I think it's enough to win a decision, which is where I think the fight's going to go. She's just got to keep the fight vertical, but I think she can, unless Granger comes out with, you know, a different sort of tactic or game plan, a different way to get Goldie down apart from trying to work in the clinch, because I do think Goldie will have strength advantages there. So I'm going to take Hannah Goldie to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, make sure you check out Newsome MMA, the YouTube channel, some great stuff on there. And always just hit me up on Twitter at MMAme. Always happy to talk all things mixed martial arts related. So make sure you hit me up at MMA and me, and yeah, we're down to chat all the time, man.
Awesome, man. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the outlet's website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and content collaboration from Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is for MMA Play 365, which I spoke about at the start of this podcast. MMA Play 365 is the perfect betting advice platform for any type of gambler. So whether you're in this game for the long term or whether you just want some fun bets whilst watching the fights on the night, the goal is to make money, and that's absolutely what we're going to be doing for you. So follow MMA Play 365 over on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, or visit MMAplay365.com to subscribe today. And the final mention is for the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too, and at CBD Life UK they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.